Well, for me, I've been actually watching very few new things other than Mank, which I watched twice in the course of the last 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
I rewatched. I had a wonderful double feature with my grandma of Citizen Kane and Ratatouille, which we were watching for our film club.
Right.
And which I think puts to rest that the joke I've been making for many years about Ratatouille is better than The Godfather, Ratatouille is better than Citizen Kane, because even putting them up next to each other, I think Brad Bird prevails.
Sure.
But I have to say that I greatly enjoyed revisiting Citizen Kane for the first time, I feel, maybe since I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And I would also say for the first time watching it in a way that it wasn't like self-consciously academic, I think.
Right.
I've seen it many times, and I watched it, and I it's one of those movies where you feel like you recognize everything and the way lines are said and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I watched it at school, kind of not at school, but at that time, kind of going like, oh, okay, I guess this is good. I'm not that entertained, but it's clearly well made. And then I listened to Roger Ebert's commentary, and I was like, oh yeah, that's some good points. Yeah, I guess it is a good. And then I saw it in the theater at the Grand Lake when they did a revival, and I was like, okay, I think I'm comfortable calling this film a masterpiece. But it was a very clinical reaction. And this is the first time watching it, I think, where it really, I felt very actually just compelled by it. I was just like, wow, this movie just moves, and it's obviously like technically astonishing, and it crackles, and the dialogue is great, and Wells, of course, is wonderful. I mean, look, this is no groundbreaking notion that this is a good movie.
Yeah.
But I had a lot of fun, and I think it was actually more compelling for my grandma than I expected it to be.
Had she not seen it before?
I mean, if she had, I'm sure she didn't remember, and I wouldn't be surprised if she hadn't. But yeah, I really enjoyed, and I was actually surprisingly moved by it. Like the ending, actually, I found myself surprised that I was very emotionally moved. Not only by the final thing with Rosebud, but the scene in the warehouse where they're all sort of talking about him. Mm-hmm. And there's this kind of moment that goes over them where all the different people who are there, who are kind of just anonymous people, are talking about, like, debating what the meaning of it is, and sort of concluding that, you can't derive a conclusion or sum up a man's life with one word. And then they all kind of like get quiet, and then the camera kind of like pulls away from them, and it's like this enormous space with hundreds and hundreds of statues and detritus.
Yeah.
And it's like kind of the moment almost before the music kicks in. It just feels so kind of empty and sad, kind of like the way that the ending of The Irishman feels. There's nothing sentimental about the music coming in. It's just kind of the emptiness and the passage of time. Was very moving. I also watched the film Twixt by Francis Ford Coppola, which I have to say is a much lesser film. It wasn't as astonishingly bad as I had been led to believe, but it is a very bad movie, and it's pretty astoundingly hideous too. I mean, it looks really, it literally looks worse than all of the student films I've worked on. That's not even a joke. Like, it literally looks worse.
Was he doing like weird like visual shit? Like, what was that?
I think he was doing a lot of stuff on green screens, and then a lot of the movie is kind of like almost black and white with some color elements, which, I don't know, doesn't look super great, and it's also green screen. But also just the regular scenes are shot in just very, very low. It looks like consumer grade camera, and
right.
I don't know. If it was a more readily available movie, I would say it would be fun to talk about someday. Maybe if someday we do a Francis Ford Coppola retrospective, which would be both enlightening and torturous, I think. We could talk about it, because I'd be curious to get your take on it, though it is not, it is not a good movie by any stretch.
Well, I was just looking, and it looks like it had a budget of only $7 million. So that doesn't surprise me. That $7 million, yeah. And then it was shot on a Sony F900, which is basically, it's like an HD camcorder, basically. So
I'm frankly astounded that movie was made for over $1 million. I really would have thought he put up like, 500,000. I mean, maybe it was just Val Kilmer's salary, though I can't imagine that would be
but $7 million
high.
is like tiny. It's tiny compared to the budgets that
I know,
of
course, but still, I mean, I've seen movies made for less that look better, and I don't know. That Francis Ford Coppola. I just hope maybe he'll make one more thing. Maybe he'll have his last shot. I doubt it.
He's done. He's like, I don't know.
He says he's going to make that sci-fi movie Megalopolis, and I don't know. I wonder if people will maybe give him, he'll get the opportunity. Like, I could see someone like Netflix being like, oh, we won't give you Scorsese money, but we'll give you a hefty budget, so you could actually do something that's not just, because he has self-funded his work for the last 25 years, and at least since 97. I don't know what to make of that man.
I don't know. It seems like he's out of the game. You know what I mean? Like, and it seems like if he tried to do anything, it would be like he's so out of practice and so out of timing and whatnot. Like, I don't know if he'd be able to do it. Maybe if he, I guess, like, had his daughter around or something, like maybe if he, there was I don't know, like maybe if he had like a team around him that was able to keep him in check, but like I don't know. I doubt it.
That's the thing. She really, at this point with that last movie with Bill Murray, I'm like, she has sustained a longer period of being a quality filmmaker than he has. I mean, at least, like, I haven't seen the 60s movies. I can't speak to that. But I really don't think he really made anything great after Apocalypse Now. And I feel like I've seen a pretty decent percentage of the movies. There's I've seen Dracula, but a few others. But I don't know. It's pretty rough. It's more rough than a lot of those guys,
Yeah, no, he has sort of, I don't know. I mean, I guess Lucas probably has a worse track record, but
yeah, I guess,
just in terms of like raw numbers, I guess, or percentage wise, maybe. But I do want to talk to you about Mank.
Let's get into Mank.
I also before we sort of as just like as an opener, I kind of feel the same way. I'm a little bit. I'm not sure if I could talk about this movie all that intelligently. So I'm kind of hesitant too. I almost wanted to watch it again, but I didn't have time this week. So
it's not like the Kaufman movie where it's really confusing, or it's not a movie that's deeply experimental.
No, it's not.
I just sort of watched it, and I the first time watching it, I just felt very intense apathy towards it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I just sort of felt like I was like, oh, okay, I don't have really negative feelings at all, but I don't have that many positive feelings outside of just the considerable level of the craft.
Right.
And then seeing it again, I think it's definitely helpful because you understand certain things of certain areas of emphasis, I think, of what he's trying to sort of focus on, and also sort of help me solidify what are the issues of the movie. But it sounds like if we're to just come out and say it, it sounds like you're not super enthusiastic about it the way maybe we have been about David Fincher's last decade of work.
Yeah, it's not that I'm not enthusiastic about. Well, maybe that's.
Or maybe you did really like it. I don't want to speak for you.
It's not that I didn't like it or that I had any. had anything wrong with like the movie itself. I thought it was very enjoyable. I really loved Gary Oldman and Mank as a character. I thought Amanda Seyfried did a better than average job for her track record.
Whoa.
She did a good job. She did a great job.
What does your negative feelings about her come from? I don't understand this.
I don't know. I don't really like her.
Based on what though?
I mean, I really hated her in Les Mis, which whatever. That was a shitty movie, anyways.
I've never seen that, but it's a Tom Hooper movie, so
yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah.
I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm like a simp for Amanda Seyfried.
Because you love Mamma Mia, right?
She's not. Yes, yeah, she's wonderful in Mamma Mia, and she's not like someone who's like, oh, one of my favorite actresses, but I've liked her. I thought she was good in Ted 2. I thought she was excellent in, I mean, it's just whatever role, but she was good in it. And she was wonderful in First Reformed.
Yes, yeah, that's true. Well, anyways, I never really connected with her as an actress. I don't think she's like.
I thought she was quite wonderful in Mank, though. I thought she was quite.
Yeah,
good.
she is very good in Mank. I mean, like I said,
everyone
all the performances are great. I loved Charles Dance. I mean, he's always my favorite part of anything. But Charles Dance is just he is like stone cold and wonderful. That's kind of the bit that he plays, though. So it's like I kind of expected that. But I also loved the guy who played Louis B. Mayer.
He was fantastic.
He's amazing. I love. But my favorite scene in the movie, I think, is when they're walking down the hallway. And he's giving the speech, and he's like, movies have to hit me here and here and here.
And he's wonderful. He's a guy who is like. I can't remember who he played in Full Metal Jacket. I'm going to say he played like the nerdy guy, the guy with the glasses.
Yeah.
In Full Metal Jacket. His name's Arliss Howard.
Yeah.
And he's just one of those guys who's sort of, he's been around, but you don't really see him.
Yeah,
that much
Private
these
Cowboy.
days.
Yeah, he's the guy with the glasses. Yeah.
Yeah, but boy, is he wonderful. I mean, I would almost argue a Simon Russell Beale-esque performance of a diminutive and pathetic, scheming, truly horrifying person. I mean, I guess not as horrifying as Lavrenti Beria, I should say. But,
yeah, it's.
But I mean, a pretty nasty guy nonetheless.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone is great across the board.
And the cinematography obviously was wonderful. I loved the lighting and it looks gorgeous. How could it not look gorgeous? But but for me, I don't know if I felt that connected to. It could be the subject matter, or it could be like I didn't feel that emotionally invested, or I think I agree with you. I was I guess a little bit apathetic towards the movie, where I was like, yeah, okay, like I don't know. I think there's a couple things that, and I don't want to speak ill of Jack Fincher or anything, but but I think there's a couple of things that he could have done to at least flesh out the characters in a way that made them made the drama between them a little bit more like rich, I think I would have really, really loved a sequence before that end sequence where Mank, he's giving his whole spiel at the, the New Year's Eve party or whatever. He's giving his whole spiel about,
the dinner party for William Randolph Hearst.
Yes. So, and he's giving his whole speech and talking about Hearst in this sort of obvious metaphor for who he is, and talking about he's the modern version of Don Quixote, and really just laying into him. I loved that scene, but I really felt like it was missing like a moment of personal connection before that between the two, right? I know, I feel the exact same way. Yeah, like they you get that kind of, you get a couple comments and looks and a little bit of like dialogue between the two in the earlier party sequence, but really for the most part you can't tell that they're anything more than just like acquaintances. and so
if
like
that at all, yeah,
right,
yeah.
and like obviously he's friendly with the daughter, which doesn't really.
No, that's his wife.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You mean Seyfried, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Marion Davies. Yeah, this is
Yes.
wife.
Gross.
So I mean, that's very funny that you would think that.
Yeah.
I mean, well, that's the thing is everyone thinks she's the basis of Susan Alexander in Citizen Kane,
yes.
but she's not exactly. I mean,
But for me, like I think the movie was a little bit split on its focus of where the drama was supposed to be coming from. Like the end made it seem like the drama was coming from Wells and sort of his his taking over of the script, but it didn't really seem like that wasn't the crux of the movie at all, really. Like that wasn't the what the movie was leaning into. Wells, he didn't even seem like a bad guy throughout the movie at all. Like if he did turn out to be this sort of this heel or whatever, like he didn't.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about that whole thing. Yeah,
he didn't come across that way throughout the whole movie, and like they have this weird scene where Oldman and like who's the guy who plays Tom Burke. They like going back and forth, and he's trying to renegotiate his contract, and it's supposed to be this sort of like dramatic sequence, but at that point I was like, I don't really understand the stakes, and we're like, this is the end of the movie, like this is it. This is
it comes completely out of nowhere. I mean, that scene, that was the only thing that in the both times watching it stuck out as not just like, oh well, apathetic, but like actually kind of bad.
Yeah.
For a number of reasons, one of which I think the biggest reason is I don't believe the scene, even if like that really happened, which I think by basically every account of what is known about the writing of Citizen Kane, it resolutely did not. Well, I mean, I don't know if there was dispute about the credit itself, but this notion of Wells taking credit for his work is something that's been a lie propagated largely because of a Pauline Kael story that was written in the 70s and has been very, very well.
Oh, Pauline. She's always getting herself into trouble.
I mean, I didn't really know much about that part of her career, but my general kind of like disdain for Pauline Kael has, I think, turned into outright hatred in the last 48 hours, because I'm like, that's like borderline despicable that she would actually do that, and also so kind of like illogically conceived, because I mean the idea that Wells was a person seeking to appear as the sole creator of this work and take credit for other things. Why would then Orson Welles credit himself the smallest in the cast at the very, very bottom? And then if you remember at the end of Citizen Kane, Welles does not get a solo credit, which every person normally does for being a writer-director. He shares it with Greg Toland, the cinematographer, just as he shares the writing credit with Mankiewicz. So, I mean, just that is ridiculous, let alone all the evidence that's been done about the different drafts of Citizen Kane that have shown that Mankiewicz, while being the initial writer of the first drafts of the film, there were many, many that were gone over by Welles and changed and edited.
Yeah,
and
but
written.
Regardless of whether or not it's true, it almost doesn't really matter because it doesn't make sense in the movie.
Exactly. That's what I was going to get to, by the way, is that it doesn't matter. This is an extra textual thing that has just been like in my head for the last few days. It's just like, holy shit. Like I'm not even like a Wells head, like someone who loves, wouldn't even say I love any of his movies other than Citizen Kane, but people who are Wells fans are right to be really pissed off about that. But I was going to say that, like, for example, The Social Network, I've often said, is one of the least accurate and most bogus movies ever made about a real-life person. But it doesn't matter, because as a piece of drama, you believe it when it's happening on screen, and at least for my money, that's all that matters. And when that happens, Wells gets so pissed off about, it's also just such a weird thing to be upset about. I mean, it's weird for the movie to, and it's weird for Cale to have an axe to grind about him being co-credited with Wells. I just, maybe this is just me, but I would have to say, even if Cale was right, which he is not, it would be. I can't imagine I'd be that angry. It's like that much of a miscarriage of justice that Wells added himself. It would be a miscarriage of justice if Mankiewicz was forgotten to history and didn't win the Oscar he deserved for screenplay. Right. But of course we know he did. So I don't. It's like even if Wells screwed him in terms of like adding himself to the credit, what's the big deal? And why would there be drama about this? So when I'm watching this in the movie, I'm just like, why is this the crux of the final drama? Why is this the final note with which Fincher leaves the movie on?
Exactly, yeah. And that's what...
utterly baffling.
And that's what I felt like most, I don't want to say annoyed about, but I was like a little bit like, I guess confused or I didn't really understand why that was sort of the crux of like, or like what we were supposed to get out of that conflict, because one, it wasn't backed by anything earlier that happened in the movie, you know, like I really don't, it really comes out of nowhere. Like there's no sort of textual lead up to that in terms of Wells and, you know, Mank's relationship or, you know, anything like that. And
there's not really anything about Wells being like overly controlling or anything.
No, the movie
just
is
the fact that he's not writing the screenplay while Mank is doing it. But I mean, there's nothing that sets up him as being backstabbing or egomaniacal, really.
Yeah, which is why it's like you know, he has that scene in the end where he's like this award will be accepted, you know, just as the movie was written, you know, not in the presence of Orson Welles, you know, whatever. And it's like, yeah, that's a cute line and a you know, a funny little zinger at the end, but it also, like, just dramatically it doesn't really make sense, and it doesn't draw me into where I thought the drama would be throughout the rest of the movie, which is sort of the tension that Mank has between, you know, William Randolph Hearst as well as, you know, with his own studio and whatnot. Like that, I think, is a better, I guess, I don't know. It just seems a little bit more.
Well, it's a place of serious drama rather than just like very like unimportant. Like who gives a fuck about? I mean, honestly, I mean, I don't want to sound too dismissive, but like who gives a shit about the credit of Citizen Kane when this guy is having his career destroyed because he, you know, criticizes a rich famous person and also abhors this person's you know, political machinations that manipulated an election. I mean, like, all these things are far more interesting. And I think also I just sort of am asking myself both times watching it, like, what is this movie about? Like, if this movie is about a man of talent and character being destroyed by a callous system that you know, values dishonesty and political machinations over any kind of integrity, and being also destroyed by his own vices of alcoholism. What do those last 15 minutes have to do with anything?
Right.
And but also, like, this gets into the greater problem of the entirety of the movie, which I think I've come to understand, or come to decide, that what makes the movie feel kind of so removed and kind of dull is that he's kind of a passive character in a lot of ways.
Exactly.
In what's going on, in the really interesting things. I guess he's not a passive character in the actual writing of Citizen Kane.
But even then, he almost is, just physically speaking, because he's laying in a bed. You know what I mean? So and you
don't really get a sense of the creation either.
Right? Yeah. Exactly. You get maybe like a couple lines here and there, and it's like that's not the focus of the movie, which I guess it's not, because watching someone write 500-page screenplay is really boring. Like, I don't really want to watch a movie about that. So like I get that. I get why that's not the focus, but also, yeah, I totally agree. He's, as much as I enjoy him and I like him as a character, and I feel like I have a connection with him charismatically, I don't feel like he's doing anything in the narrative that I'm especially that drawn to. And I think, yeah, you hit it on the head, where he's not he's very passive in the narrative. Like, he's very even with the scene with his friend, the guy who is drunk in the election, the guy who swung the election, like he doesn't make any significant choices in that matter, as the main character.
And also just the whole thing of that whole passage of the movie, it's not linked to who he is really, other than just he's seeing like, oh wow, this is really nefarious, what's going on behind the scenes here. But it's not linked to his personal failure or his actions. It's just sort of like he's watching it from a distance. And it would be one thing if the structure of the movie was based around the inspiration of his writing of the movie. But I can't say I really get that much. Like, the things that are going on with the election and that sort of thing are loosely connected to the movie, but it doesn't feel, and also that would just be kind of, I mean, that would be just sort of like Bohemian Rhapsody or something, I guess. To reduce it to that. But as a structure, I mean, I can't say I'm not even that crazy about the sort of, it's not a framing device. The thing with him at Victorville writing the script is it's not like that's the framing device and then it brings you back into the past.
It's
just
not.
Sort of like he's just, I mean, dare I make a nasty comparison here? It's he's doing what Greta Gerwig did with Little Women, where he's just telling the story and then just dicing it up and throwing it in different directions. I mean, it's not as bad a film, but I think
I almost think that if it was a framing device, or if it was sort of a way for, like, you start with the introduction to a scene, and presumably it's a scene that we all know from Citizen Kane, but even if it's not, it's one that we kind of understand and are able to be hooked in with sort of this first couple of lines in that scene, and then it goes back and it sort of has the sort of flashback sequences where he's drawing these sequences from. I think that could have been much more, like, you might have felt more connected to him as the main character, even if he's just sort of a scribe in the way that, like, what's the main character's name in the Great Gatsby?
Nick Carraway.
Yeah, exactly.
I think.
If he's sort of that. If he's sort of that role as the passive, observer, but also the one who's sort of passing that legacy down, and then also at the same time, because he has such an opposition, or because he's so hurt by whatever is going around him, he has a reaction to someone who he may have been good friends with earlier on. Even if you have to take some of these liberties to do, I don't know if they were, him and William Randolph Hearst were even as acquainted as they were in the movie, but regardless, I think it would have been much more interesting had they been a little bit more connected, or a little bit, maybe have you could even just do it in one scene where they're, Hearst is like, a young, bright-eyed, trying to be a politician or something, and he tries to get Mank on board, or something, like something small.
Whatever it is, you need something to set up that last scene, the big scene at the dinner table, because even though it's a well like acted scene and there's a lot of great I don't know. I'm always a big fan of Fincher's ability to convey little moments of character and little reactions between people.
Yeah.
I actually think that could be part of the reason when people say he shoots so many takes, I'm not sure if people are actually talking about takes of one angle or just takes of the same scene, which would make more sense maybe because I could imagine he has lots of different coverage.
Yeah,
on every scene. Even a two-person scene, there's so many.
I actually know the answer to this. It's takes of a scene because I watched a documentary. I'll send it to you right now. Actually, you'd find it really interesting. It's called The Making of Social Network.
Oh right, okay.
And it's very, very good. It's on YouTube. So you can watch it.
Because when someone's saying, when like Amanda Seyfried says, I had to do 200 takes of this whatever, I don't think that really was. She's like one angle, 200 takes. I think it's probably just like he's shooting like a wide and then like a little closer and then a meter. Like he does so many different.
I think it depends on. I think it depends on the scene as well. You know, like there's definitely some like there's differences between taking a scene just of two people talking versus a scene where you're like blocking multiple people and whatnot. So like in this movie, there is a lot of like ensemble blocking and staging. So yeah, I can imagine he's taking a bunch of takes of the same scene, but doing running it through different times and getting different coverage of it. I'm probably not explaining that very well to his actors either because
I can't. I'm not. Well, I can't speak to that. But he regardless of all that, with that scene, and it's not like you're not watching going, oh, this is so bad. But I feel like it almost like in my eyes watching it the second time, it almost feels like it becomes not a good scene.
Wait, which scene do you mean?
The scene where Mank is drunk at the dinner party and berates Hearst. And to a lesser extent Mayer. And it feels like that scene kind of gets, it's like he destroys what would have been like a pretty good or even a great scene by one doing this weird thing where he keeps intercutting it with the stuff with Wells, which I already am not crazy about the structure of the movie, but I really don't think it really serves the scenes to chop them up in that way because it's not like Citizen Kane, which ostensibly this movie seems to be aping aspects of, where when you return to the present, you're getting a further insight about the past that you've been seeing.
Right.
Yeah, you get Joseph Cotton reminiscing, filling in some detail, some kind of character. They're two scenes that are unrelated, save for maybe some thematic relation, and even that I think is a stretch. So it undercuts the pace of the scene. And then on top of that, what's the scene, while it may be dramatic, it kind of has no meaning because there is nothing between him and Hearst. And there is, there's a sense of the embarrassment maybe for Marion because he does have a close relationship with her, somewhat close. But it just kind of feels empty, and it feels like it should be a scene that has a lot of impact. Like it's placed in the movie kind of like the same way the Andrew Garfield Jesse Eisenberg fight scene is placed in The Social Network.
Right,
exactly. It feels like a big scene where someone finally like loses their shit and just goes off on one of the big characters.
Exactly.
But in that scene, it's like it feels like Greek tragedy. And this one, it just feels like, I don't know. To me, it feels like nothing. So it's like, I mean, Gary Oldman does a great job, and obviously he's a great actor and can play drunk very well. But I don't know. I don't even think I really. I'm trying to think of like what parts of the movie I really thought were particularly good. I think I really liked the section about the election. Like I think that part of it is really strong, because even though he's doesn't have a hand in what's happening, it's there's a sense of revelation to it. There's a sense of drama to it that's kind of missing from other parts of the movie, where you're kind of seeing him learning these things and his reaction to these things of kind of the underhanded tactics that are going on behind the scenes. I mean, I find the whole thing with the propaganda film actually quite chilling.
Mm-hmm.
That whole thing where you kind of realize how the black guy is being used in that scene and how the Russian guy is being used. And I don't know. I like the election night scene too, but maybe that's just like visually, because he just does some cool stuff visually. I think this is a good actually point to talk about the visuals of the movie and the choices of. Well, okay. First of all, unrelated to the film quality of the film itself, I have to whinge a little bit about streaming here, because I mean, to me, this movie, the watching of this movie, was like a textbook example of the inadequacy of this format when you compare it to seeing the movies. Because I start this movie watching it, and as soon as the opening credits come up, as the camera is panning down through the text on the screen, the grain structure is like crystallizing and pixelating and holding in place and freezing. And then it goes to you see the characters' faces, and then their faces are. And so it's like, I'm not sure if it's just a result of the artificial grain layer that's put over the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever it was, I'm not sure if you experienced any of this, but whatever it was for me, it was causing the whole film to look horrible. And it was actually only when I played it through my computer, which is, I think, a slightly lesser quality. I guess for whatever reason, it's not quite as distracting, though it still does not look good. It still looks, there's still parts of it that look pixelated or hazy in a way that is certainly not the intention of Fincher.
I didn't notice it that like artifacting that bad. And it's possible. I mean, I do have very fast internet up here, so obviously that does affect certain things. I did notice the artificial grain in the very beginning. So yeah, I agree. There it was. I don't want to say it was distracting. I guess like I noticed it right off the bat. But for me, yeah, I guess I didn't really. I wasn't distracted quality wise in terms of like what my image was showing. So
I mean, it's more a complaint about the system than about the grain. Because once I figured out the best way to watch it, I was able to just settle in. I'm watching the movie. But it just, to me, it's just indicative of like it's like a fairly solid movie. Better than many movies I see in a movie theater. But I'm like, I've had to start it 3 times, and I'm just like running from different room to try it on the TV, and it's just like, it's just so shamefully laborious and lower quality than if I was seeing this in the movie theater, none of this would be an issue.
Yeah,
and I'm sure the grain would look much better. But outside of just my, whinging complaints about, streaming, I mean, let alone just the idea that, like, this is a beautifully shot movie that should be seen in the movie theater anyway. I mean, I just,
Which we probably will never get a chance to, but...
I know. I know. I was really pissed. When the Furt Grain thing happened, I was so pissed that I didn't go and see it at the Embarcadero, because I know I had the chance to. But the whole thing with that's interesting about movies coming out directly to streaming is I find this year it's sort of been an interesting test of like where my strongest loyalties lie to my favorite directors.
Yeah.
Like all year I'm like, oh, Frederick Wiseman, his 4.5-hour City Hall documentary is going to drop anytime. And then it dropped. I still haven't watched it, But the only people who I've watched the movie like the day it came out were Spike Lee and David Fincher.
Mm-hmm.
And in both cases, I felt mixed to positive feelings about the movie, but also regretted that I'm seeing these kind of this kind of like audacious vision in both movies, just on my fucking laptop.
Yeah.
But But the visuals themselves, what I'm trying to arrive at here, I apologize for the rambling nature of my thoughts about this goddamn movie, but there's just sort of it's an odd thing about this movie that he's clearly subordinating his normal mode of visual conveyance of information.
Yeah.
You know, it's I would say every other David Fincher movie, including Alien 3, you could almost instantly recognize as his style. It's very distinct, and Mindhunter looks the same way too. Even the episodes he didn't technically direct, but this movie, it's an odd combination of he's clearly emulating past style, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's clearly emulating, the look and the way things are staged in old movies. But he's not. I wouldn't say he's quite emulating Wells, because it's not staged the way Kane is.
No,
right?
It's not,
and it doesn't look like that. It just sort of looks like movies from the 40s.
That was something that I picked up on too. Was that, and again, I mean, I think the movie looks beautiful, but it's true. There's kind of a strangeness to, like I guess I'm not sure what he's trying to get at with the staging of this movie and the blocking of this movie, in a way that it's like there's he does modern things with the camera, but not in a way that like makes you reminiscent of like Citizen Kane, which you might think it should, like he does certain shots where you're like that's not really something that would, be shown in Citizen Kane, so it's like it's like I don't know, I kind of missed the the classic sequences of big rooms and the light streaming through the windows and whatnot, or like a scene where they're all sitting in front of a projector and the smoke is going up, like there's, I don't want to say he should have like copied Kane necessarily, but like he kind of I feel like he kind of shot for a middle ground of like, well, we don't want to feel like we're aping Kane too much, but we also don't want to feel like we're out of time and place. So it kind of just feels like ambiguous, I guess, or vague.
Exactly. It feels uncertain of which direction, and this is not like a big issue of the movie that's like I'm watching the movie going like his visual style is vague and I don't understand and this movie's bad therefore because of it. But it just, as I'm watching, particularly the second time, I'm sort of going like, he's not shooting this scene completely the way a normal scene would be shot in a normal David Fincher movie, but then all of a sudden he's editing in a way where it's like it's totally the style of his movies, especially when the conversations get really fast, right? And the way he covers them is, no old movie, whether by Orson Welles or by anyone, looks like that. And also there are still some of the kind of I don't want to say tics, because I love these kind of elements of Fincher's movies that remain in this, like when someone moves down in the frame, the camera moves with them, which again is not at all something you'd ever see in an old movie, right? Like someone kneels down, it's not going to go like that. So I just don't. And then of course the music, he got Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross to completely write a score that's like old Hollywood score, which is lovely. I don't know. Maybe this is just I shouldn't even complain about this, because I mean it looks better than most of the movies I've seen this year. It's just as a, and then it's also like the structure of the movie is hinting at being like the structure of Citizen Kane, right? The non-linear structure, but it doesn't. But it doesn't
get there.
It's like he doesn't understand it, or he just doesn't really care. I don't really know what it is.
Yeah,
and it just I don't know. It falls in this sort of weird middle ground where I was thinking like, obviously he's not as great a director, but like that guy Michel Hazanavicius, who did The Artist and Godard Mon Amour.
Yeah.
Like his movies are like almost, you could almost show them to someone and you'd be convinced that that's a silent movie or a French movie from the 60s.
Right,
He's
exactly.
so thorough in the details of the time. But this is sort of just it's an odd mix. I guess that's really all it is. It's not a vast detriment. I love there's some like really beautiful stuff though, like that he meets Marion Davies it looks like under like cherry blossoms or something.
Mm-hmm.
There's something falling in the air.
Yeah.
And there's a sun. The sun is facing right into the camera. I thought that looked just gorgeous though.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting that the way he shoots what appears to be an evening scene with her where they're walking through the fountain and everything. You could educate me on this is it shot day for night or like what?
Yeah, it looked like it was. But that's what they would have done back in the day. So like that
right,
made sense to me.
There's like a hot light on them. But it looked really nice and I like that. That's kind of a nice scene with the two of them.
I like that scene too. Yeah. Oh, and then as well as the sequence where she's like burning on the pyre, in her scene.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that sequence too when they sort of, I guess, not really first meet, but when they're talking for the first time in the movie, right?
Yeah, that's when they first meet each other, I think. But I think the movie does really kind of light up whenever it's Amanda Seyfried is in it or when Arliss Howard as Louis B. Mayer is in it. Like I feel like those are kind of the best sections of the movie.
I feel like I've been really down on it in this conversation, almost like. Well, I don't know. I don't really know why because I didn't feel that strongly. Like I didn't feel like I didn't like the movie in any significant way. I just had some like, I guess just some issues with it that made like held it back from me being completely enthralled by it. But at the same time, I guess the reason why I might sound a little bit disappointed is because like Fincher being the sort of behemoth director that he is, like I kind of have maybe I just have too high expectations for him and for Nolan as well. Like I don't know. I have very similar kind of reaction as with Tenet, where if either of those movies just were dropped by anonymous director, I would be like, hey, that was a really good movie. And right.
Really well made and a really great I would kind of categorize them the way I would categorize, I think, like something like The Last Black Man in San Francisco,
Yeah.
Where you go,
exactly.
Like, the filmmaking craft here and skill is higher than the quality of the story itself being portrayed, I think I would say about Mank and probably Tenet as well. I'm not sure if does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Like the form exceeds the actual story. But it's just a weird thing to talk about because I'm also thinking back to like that scene with Louis Mayer where he's telling people about the pay cuts and where all the stuff where he's also the funeral scene where he's putting on the performance of grief and then he puts the handkerchief out the window and he has this blank look on his face. That stuff is really great.
Yeah,
the stuff he's that and that whole speech he gives and then he comes to the back. He's like, oh, how did I do, man? And then what does Gary Oldman say? He's like, not even the most shameful thing I've seen in my entire life.
Yeah.
Also, visually, I think I maybe said already, visually, the whole election night thing. The election night montage is kind of feels like vintage Fincher, where he does some of those kind of stylized, like in a different way, but like the boat racing sequence in Social Network, where it kind of goes into like a dreamy montage style, and I don't know, that's a lot of fun visually. I have a strong feeling this guy is going to probably win. Messerschmitt is going to win Best Cinematography for this movie, just because people look at black and white movies and they go automatically, "Oh wow, that was so artistic." And
I mean, maybe
I shouldn't talk because I'm one of those people, but I mean.
Yeah, I don't know. I really have no idea what's even being considered or what's in the running for for this year. Like I don't have any thought about what could be or couldn't be.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, given this year, what else is going to be?
No,
maybe
yeah,
Tenet,
exactly.
I don't know, but
yeah, but I mean, yeah, I guess that's kind of all I have to say, honestly.
Jesus, this is like pathetic. How we're just like. Usually we like Tenet. We went like 2.5 hours, and now we're just like.
I know, but I think we kind of feel very similarly to this movie, and like, yeah, it's good. Like it's like I don't feel like this is a movie that I'm necessarily like itching to revisit, I guess. Like I would have for this show had I had a little more time, but like I don't know, it's not one that I'm like, oh, everybody's got to see this, you know what I mean? Like whereas I think in a normal in a normal year where a David Fincher movie and a Christopher Nolan movie came out, like they would be on the top of my list of recommendations. But like this year, like imagine what is it? 2010. That's Social Network and Inception.
They made both of their best movies. That's true. Yeah. Oh my god.
So like imagine. Yeah. So, but this year I'm like, you can skip it if you want.
that I would have never guessed in a million years that the year that Spike Lee, the most anticipated movies I've seen this year by Spike Lee, Christopher Nolan, and David Fincher I would like all of them less than the Pete Davidson Judd Apatow movie that came out earlier, which genuinely I think is a better movie, or the Andy Samberg movie too.
Yeah, or The Invisible Man.
Yeah, I mean it's like
which they kind of really? He kind of throws a dig at the Universal monsters in this movie, but like it kind of smacked him strong this year, honestly.
Yeah, I don't Yeah, those studio scenes are kind of fun in that movie.
I did like that. I liked the writer's room and like the pitching to the executives. That was fun. But it was also like, I don't know, there's a tendency in some of these movies to be a little bit like navel gazing. So.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing we're going to be inherently interested in because we're just old Hollywood. And I'm like one of these people who I'm like, oh, Ben Hecht, I've heard of him. And like, oh, S.J. Perelman, he was a tutor to the young Woody Allen for a joke writer. Like this is the shit I have in my head watching that. I just once again, like so many of these Netflix originals by these auteur directors, I just imagine these regular people on Netflix going like, oh, Amanda Seyfried, oh, Gary Oldman, he was so wonderful when he played Winston Churchill. And they click on this and go like, what the fuck is it? And someone actually looked at the metrics from just December 5th to December 6th, and Mank was in the top 10, and then by the next day it had dropped out in favor of Adam Sandler's Little Nicky. So that gives you a sense of what the American populace wants from their streaming services.
I mean, I get it. I was kind of confused that this was like a Netflix. I guess maybe I wasn't that confused, but like, I was a little bit like.
Well, it makes sense because who else would give Fincher the fucking leeway to make a movie like this?
Yeah, it's true, but it's also like, I don't know. Netflix is kind of a normie platform, so like this isn't really like if you're just grandma scrolling through and you're like, oh, Mank about an alcoholic writer. That sounds wonderful. And then and then you watch this movie and you're like, oh, I didn't really understand that at all. Like I don't know.
It's that's the curious thing about Netflix is it is totally like. It is like the most mainstream platform. I think probably it's the one more people have than anything else.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
But the movies that's the thing is half of their original movies, or maybe like 2/3, are like just asinine teenage like utter garbage. Right. But then it's like this little part of their finances is them financing these like
auteurs,
great auteur directors to make their weirdest. Every one of them has made like their weirdest movie, like Kaufman and Spike. And I was actually thinking that outside of the style and the bizarre structure of the movie, in many ways, this sort of feels like the kind of movie you'd see at like the Albany Twin that I would in normal days watch in a movie theater with a bunch of geriatrics.
Right. Yeah.
Like one of the the Judy Garland biopic where it's just like a movie in terms of my reaction to it, where I watch it and I go like, oh, that was an interesting slice of history, but not a particularly deep I mean, it feels like such a kind of a almost blasphemous thing to say, but I mean, I think that like something like Darkest Hour as a historical biopic is actually far more insightful and certainly far more compelling,
definitely,
than a movie like this. I know it's kind of a weird thing to say just because it's the same actor, and also oddly a similar dynamic with him and the secretary, I thought.
Well, I think he puts in a better performance in The Darkest Hour than he does in this movie. But it's like they're still great, and Gary Oldman is wonderful in everything he does. But
yeah, I have nothing but good things to say about Gary Oldman. He's one of those guys like Philip Seymour Hoffman where he never. In those Batman movies, man, he could have been slumming.
Totally, yeah.
Commissioner Gordon. I mean, there's nothing more lame than saying you're gonna play Commissioner Gordon. But like, I think honestly, like in Dark Knight, he's like, honestly to me is like the most moving performance other than Ledger in that movie.
Yeah.
He's just like incredible in that movie. Yeah, he of course is great. But I think the key thing when you compare it to something like a really good historical biopic is those are movies about a character's decisions and what he is doing and what's going on inside his head.
Exactly.
And it's personal. It feels personal. And also a key thing is it's at least in the case of Darkest Hour is it's a single moment in time. It's one, and I think if Fincher had maybe just streamlined it so it was just about the election or something like that, it might have been a better film than jumping all over the. Because I have to say also did you get a kind of a feeling at a certain point that this after he finishes the script in Victorville, all of the present day or later, 1938 or 9 scenes end up being kind of repetitions of the same, where it's just like a guy comes to meet him and tells him, Hearst will destroy you, don't write the script.
Right,
and then, Then Marion comes and says the same thing. And then his brother comes and says the same thing.
But also there doesn't seem to be like a basis necessarily for that, like other than
you're just told that it's
exactly,
and because of history, but it would be much more powerful if there was a sense, again, it's like it goes back to setting up a relationship with her, so it would feel more powerful. I mean, you get a sense of Hearst's power through the political side of the movie, but it just feels kind of weak, and also it's dramatically weak because he's not budging. He's not changing his opinion. It's not
exactly. There's
dramatically it's going anywhere. Like there's good dialogue between them, and the actors are good. We by the way, we didn't mention Tom Pelphrey, who plays his brother. Who did you realize who that was? What you've seen him in?
Probably not.
He was Laura Linney's brother in Ozark.
Oh yeah, he's Ben.
Which I think also it's hilarious
that's funny
because Pelphrey is very like good looking, and in the movie they say, "Oh, your younger brother Joseph Mankiewicz, the director of Cleopatra and All About Eve." They're like, "Oh, he's very good looking," and then you look up Joseph Mankiewicz, and he like looks like me, like he did not look like a handsome. Tom Pelphrey also he kind of looks. Does he look Asian to you?
Like very slightly, I guess. Yeah.
Like kind of like Keanu Reeves Asian. Like I don't know. It always kind of is a little weird to me when I see him as the brother of the very white Laura Linney.
Right.
But he's a good actor, and there's a nice dynamic between them.
Yeah. I mean, no, I kind of agree. The one thing that I will say I thought was nice and interesting, and I guess we kind of touched on it a little bit, was with the stuff about the election and sort of the things going on behind the scenes. Like I really loved the scenes of sort of like the internal pressure of like the bosses, and I think that's a little bit more of a ahead of its time critique from Jack there, or maybe it was a Fincher add in, but I think it's a little bit relevant as well in terms of like the way Hollywood runs as well.
Curiously, a lot of the film's ideas about like politics and like the kind of inner machinations of things was surprisingly, because I definitely went into this movie thinking like this is just a step into another time. But a lot of the parallels of like the sort of epidemic of misinformation being thrown out was like surprisingly very relevant. And like I didn't expect it to kind of cut so close to home with the election we went through this year, oddly. I gotta say, by the way, did you realize that Upton Sinclair, this is a minor note, it was played by Bill Nye the Science Guy?
No, I didn't.
He's giving that rally. I was like,
I didn't even. I mean,
Bill
you
Nye.
don't really see him, so.
You see this? I saw the side of his face. I was like, damn, that guy looks like a lot like Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Yeah, you're right. It was Bill Nye the Science Guy.
I can't imagine why Fincher
so random
thought of casting him, but I don't know.
Well, and then it was funny, that sequence where they're on the beach and they're listening to the radio and the ad comes on and he's like that's not an old lady, that's like someone I knew. It really reminded me of, remember when there was that dumb Instagram video of all the celebrities singing Imagine. I remember that. That's what it reminded me of, that whole sequence and like the going through the ads. So. It was funny.
It's interesting that reminded you of that, because I didn't think of that. It's a little different though, I have to say, with something in the modern times where it's, I don't know. I find the idea of getting famous people to portray working class people or getting famous people to. There's a big difference between just being famous and saying I endorse someone.
Yeah.
And being famous and putting on a charade, which is far more chilling to me.
I just mean in the way that, like, there's sort of this implicit manipulation in the way that these things are kind of consumed. It didn't remind me like it was like exactly one for one, but it was just like it brought me visions of like all of the propaganda that I've seen throughout, these last couple of years. I was like, oh wow, Hollywood back to its old ways.
Yeah, well, it's I mean, there are more underhanded things going on in the world, that are, I would say, even more equivalent. More things like where people see stories online that are just not true, and things like that. It's interesting how it's sort of endured, and also interesting that the kind of seeing Hollywood. I don't know. I mean, we sort of think of Hollywood as like a liberal place. It's probably not nearly as liberal as we really think it is, and I think people who run Hollywood probably are not at all. But certainly there is a different political tenor to what's going on in the world of 1934.
Yeah.
In terms of adjacent to Hollywood than now. By the way, again, a very random thought, but I thought it's very strange that there is maybe I just wasted time to even explain this to you, but there, in the background of one of the outside the studio lot, there's a movie theater backdrop, and or marquee, and it is identical to the movie theater in Berkeley, the defunct one across the street from Five Star, and has a different title on it, but like literally, like I studied them side by side, and it's the exact same like pattern,
right?
The same spiral design, the same font. It's utterly baffling, but this is not really a constructive thing to bring up, other than just I had to pause the movie like the Zapruder film and like try and figure out what was going on.
I mean, maybe they just mass produced a bunch of those. Honestly, like they
that's
sent them throughout the throughout California or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. I was going to say, actually, this one scene I really do like that we actually didn't mention was the scene in the Hearst drawing room where there's a really fast discussion and they're talking about Hitler and they're talking about Sinclair.
Yeah.
And they're talking about socialism and communism. That to me was just again, a nice, another kind of felt like a vintage Fincher thing where it's like lots of different people talking very fast. Lots of little interesting exchanges, particularly between visual eye contact between Marion and between Gary Oldman in that scene. And I don't know. I just thought that was a really well done, kind of well written little scene.
Yeah, no. I agree. I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but yeah, I agree. That scene is.
Yeah, I think you did.
It stood out to me as sort of like this. Oh yeah, this is sort of classic Fincher and classic, going back and forth and quick dialogue and whatnot. Like, and good performances all around too. Everybody in that scene is wonderful. So yeah, no, I agree. I mean, there's good things to take away from this movie, and it's not worth a watch. I think maybe, I honestly, I think the general audience would find this movie boring.
I mean, that's the most interesting, the most interesting thing about Mank is just that I'm watching this movie that I'm looking forward to so much, and one of the top five living directors. And I think it really is like the first movie I've watched by him where I wasn't like absolutely compelled by,
right? Including
like Alien and Benjamin Button, which are flawed movies, but I'm like riveted by them. And this was the first where I was like, I almost felt like I was looking at my watch, which I like never feel. I've never ever really felt watching one of his movies.
Yeah.
But I think that just comes down to the. It's not that there's a lack of character, but it's the lack of investigation. It's the lack of, Citizen Kane. You're watching it, or The Social Network, or whatever. As you learn these things, Citizen Kane, it goes like in a circle. Like you learn what Thatcher knows about him, and then you see his life through the eyes of Joseph Cotton, and you see his life through the eyes of the wife. And each time you're learning more and more, and you're getting more of the pieces of the puzzle of who he is. And I don't feel like when I'm just watching, him during the election or during these sort of things, it's not like deepening my idea of who he is. At least, I would say.
So what you're saying
I think that's the key thing, because I don't want to just be like, oh, it was boring and I'm just an idiot because I just want things to go. I just want to watch John David Washington climb on a fire truck. But I want to like. I don't know. Maybe I need to see it a third time to be more definitive. But I think that's as much as I can say at this point. Is that it's the lack of involvement in and the passiveness of who
I think really what you're trying to say is it's all Jack Fincher's fault. He should never have written this movie.
Oh no.
That's what you're really, it's really coming down to, isn't it?
What's really funny is that like if Fincher, which it seems like Fincher, I don't know, maybe he's just trying to be true to his father or whatever, but like this whole baffling like Wells revisionism that happens at the end of the movie, it seems to be in support of the Kale thing, right? It seems to be the mic drop of the movie is that Wells didn't write the movie and Mank got screwed over and died really young. And it just, to me, it seems very ironic given that like David Fincher's best movie is the result of a screenwriter and director working in tandem. And like he more than anyone should know that even if a masterpiece of a screenplay is written, it's not the be all end all of authorship over the film that is then made.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, the Social Network script obviously is amazing, but that movie would not be if what it was if just some nobody directed it.
It's funny, Sorkin actually kind of says that in the behind the scenes documentary.
Oh, really?
I think it's I think Sorkin says it. He does. He's like, I'm not so good at narrative, so it's a really good thing that David Fincher is able to like take a movie that I made, or take the script and really narrow it down and focus on sort of like the drama aspect of it, because I'm not so good at like stringing A and B together. That's basically what he says.
And let alone just the propulsive. Like I'm thinking about in the case of the Social Network stuff, like the montage of the hacking, which of course is Fincher.
Exactly.
And in the case of Citizen Kane is like, Herman Mankiewicz did not come up with the idea of like shooting in deep focus and then having, you know, Wells lose his empire and then walk into the background, and the windows you thought were close are like taller than he is, and it dwarfs him before he walks, you know, like that's shit that only an innovator like Wells would have come up with.
Right.
And you know,
Yeah.
what a bunch of hokum. Royal Ocean, I'm not sure, do you follow the Royal Ocean Film Society?
Yeah, I do.
YouTube?
I didn't watch their movie on it though.
He did an essay
video.
about Kale and the Raising Cain thing, and it was very informative if you're interested in that. But yeah, I think I've said my piece about this.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I mean,
We'll get him next time, Fincher. Please bring back. I always talk on this podcast like these people are listening to it, but like David Fincher, please, Mindhunter. Do not lose Mindhunter for this.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I kind of hope he, you know, whether or not, obviously, I do hope he goes back to Mindhunter, but I also hope he kind of, he's kind of taken the last 5+ years off of making movies, so I hope he goes back to like actually making movies again. And
I would love that too. I mean,
and even before that, so he did, he just did Social Network and Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and then Gone Girl in 2014. So yeah, I mean this decade he's kind of been a little bit less movie heavy than what he has been. So I hope he starts pumping him out a little bit sooner.
Yeah,
I guess.
I mean, look, this guy, you know, he rarely misses, and I'd say the last time he missed like greatness was like Benjamin Button, and then like what did he do right after that? He did The Social Network.
Yeah.
So.
And you know, right before that, he did Zodiac. So you know.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not like, again, like Nolan. I'm not thinking he's going anywhere.
He's washed up.
But I'm like, I don't want to be like one of these like simps on Twitter who is constantly like, bring back Mindhunter, bring back, you know, like people are constantly like complaining about whatever shows have been canceled, because I think that worked for one show or something, right? What show? Or work for the Snyder Cut. That's what really kind of enabled it. I think.
Gosh!
People
Wait, did they actually cancel Mindhunter?
Well, it's not been canceled, and that's the thing, is it's not really Netflix's fault per se. It's that Fincher he and Netflix decided to release the cast, which kind of effectively makes the show more up in the air, right?
Right.
But it makes sense to do so, because while he's doing production on this movie, he doesn't want, you know, Jonathan Groff and Holt McCallany to be like, you know, not able to do other work.
Yeah, exactly.
So they release them from their contract. But I would hope, I mean, that really is like the only show. You know, so many shows, they do their second season. I'm like, don't fucking waste my time with a second season. What a bunch of crap. And like Mindhunter, I'm sitting here like I could watch like 5 more seasons of that show. That, I mean, it is endlessly fascinating.
Yeah, I agree. And there's quite a lot that they can, you know, wring out of that sponge.
Yeah, the stuff with Tench and his son. I mean, and the wife. And that was
well, not just that.
Much...
I mean, that was great, but also like, you know, they still have the BTK who's like running around, and they haven't even scratched that surface. So
yeah, that's true.
I don't know. Anyways, I think that's all. I'm this year sucks.
Yeah, in every fucking way. Yeah, I mean, like this was like one of the last hopes, you know, like it really was. Every time you would say the year sucks, I would always kind of have the asterisk of like, it sucks, but we still got Mank. And then I'm like, what the fuck? This is Mank? Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God. So it's really just Soul at this point that I'm holding on to.
Yeah, I mean, Pete Docter. Has he missed yet?
No.
Well,
maybe
this is the year to do it. This is the year to fuck up. If anyone, you know, if it brought these 2 greats or 3 greats almost at this point to their knees, it could do it to Doctor as well. Well,
I should probably eat a burrito or something.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll let you go, and I'll talk to you soon then.
Take care, Cameron. I'll see you.
Sounds good.